So the beginning was really focusing on defining the thing properly and making sure that it's tied to a greater purpose and that it's bite size and able to be escalated or de-escalated and the why behind it. And then we shifted into resistance because people hit that immediately.
Uh-huh.
And sort of the different ways that people orient to their expectations and Gretchen Rubin's concept. What's your relationship to unconditional love? And what's your upbringing around all of that? And how does that relate to this habit? I've now shifted into like, who are you becoming and who is this, the wholeness that's inside of you? And what are these leftover things that are stuck on it that we can just get off of you so that you're this shining thing inside?
One of the defining things about my work is that suffering is optional. Like the shame or like, oh, this is hard, the like weighty thinking. It's not that things are necessarily going to be effortless, but the shame is optional. So I love that you've dived into that. I'm a really big fan of thinking less about everything. Seems like our number one problem in almost everything that we're trying to do is overthinking everything. Thinking about things, having all these judgments about them, the voice that might be saying, do the thing instead of doing the thing. Compassion for that. How much we get caught up in our thinking, our drama, and our resistance. But on the other side, remembering that it's actually kind of simple. Like, oh, you just do this thing. I don't need to feel all gung-ho in order to go through the steps in my morning routine. It's kind of just logistical. It's neutral as long as there's this focus on tiny actions. Psychologically, it's often making it tiny enough that it gets through the psychology. Tiny enough that we'll actually do something.
One of the guiding principles of this course is doing as a form of inquiry. But it's important to remember that the doing comes before the inquiry.
Yeah. Just go do something. Go in a direction that you know is the wrong direction, just so that there's some kind of movement. Like we're so much more agile than we think. And it really becomes fun really quickly by letting go of trying to figure it out and trying to get it right from the very beginning.
Right.
Make the thing tiny enough that it's not really using willpower. It's more a matter of remembering. There's a common thing that happens with people in the process of building more discipline or changing habits, where they're still oriented towards the way that they were before. And they think of what they're doing now as something new and different and extra, as if they're like building a house of cards. And as soon as one card falls over, the whole thing falls down, and they just sort of go into the like fuck it thinking. Like, well, we're just like back to the way that we were before. Their mindset needs to shift. Like their internal thermostat needs to be set somewhere else. We'll gravitate towards whatever we have made up as normal. It's just that most of us don't realize that we've made up what is normal. They think that yesterday is normal. Part of being clever about it is picking a normal that resonates with us, that would have us making healthy choices. So if we fail at something or don't follow through, like, oh, that was weird. That's not like me. It's like, oh, I'll go back to being me, which means going back to doing the habit. Like, what if you just let yourself gravitate back towards being in integrity? That's actually has become part of my definition of integrity, that there's this force where everything wants to come into alignment. It's not that we need to make ourselves be upright and get into alignment and mean what we say. It's acknowledging that we actually want to.
Mm.
We inherently want to be healthy. So there's two ideas that comes to mind that I also like to share. Specifically, a common thread, like one of the common skills in becoming more disciplined, having better habits, is learning to enjoy discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
reversal of desire,
Mm-hmm.
where instead of like, oh, I hate this experience, I'm just going to like sort of weather through it. It's like, ooh, I love this. I actually use the tool when I take a cold shower of like, I love the cold. Cold sets me free.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yes, like that, like intense feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like taking something that's
Yeah.
painful and turning it into pleasure because it's all made up.
We're going to delay gratification because you have a better life when you delay gratification, but we're going to game it in a way that you get gratification out of delaying it.
Mm-hmm. And you can start with like whatever habit where you're actually willing to be uncomfortable, like you're actually willing, you get to the point where you can enjoy that discomfort, and that can spread to other things.
In other words, you've re-engineered your orientation to discomfort. This relates to an idea that you posted about the other day. It was about desire and about how desire is fine. Enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean you have to act on it. Like being able to separate the enjoyment of desire from the compulsion to act on each desire is a real testament to growth.
I think a lot of damage has been done by the English translation of Buddhism,
Uh-huh.
where the word desire has become the thing that's we try to avoid that causes suffering. But no, it's like the attachment to desire
Mm.
that causes suffering. If we try to eliminate desire, first of all, impossible, but also that creates suffering. That's like an attachment to not desiring.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm running into a lot of people who want to change everything all at once and or have lots of so many ideas and they get and I run into this too. Once I get sparked with that sense of desire to want to change something or accomplish something and then that ultimately that cycle builds a sort of a pain cycle such that it reduces my ability to desire things because I know that desire is met with disappointment. Um,
We've been enculturated that when we want something, that means that we're supposed to go do it.
right.
Every desire has suddenly become an obligation. Like we've
Yes.
added another weight to our life every time that we come up with an idea of something we want.
Right.
And in some ways, it's made worse by a lot of like in the empowerment, transformational human potential people, where it's like, what do you want? Okay, well, what are you going to do about it? Like turn it into an action plan. If every time you see a door, you had to go through it,
Mhm.
that's
Well,
a
this
pretty
is one of
ridiculous way to
by the
live.
way, I've been reading on shame and how it can be useful. It's a very similar to stress or anxiety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like anxiety is good when it's a warning sign, but if it becomes the background noise or you can't turn the alarm off, then you're just living in a place where your fire alarm is going off all the time. Not only does it drive you crazy, but it ceases to be a very good warning sign.
And also I love the alarm analogy because you only need an alarm for like 1 second. Like imagine like leaving your fire alarm on because you're a bad person.
Right, that's it. That's what shame is. Leaving your fire alarm on because you're a bad person.
like why is your fire alarm going off like nonstop all day? It's to remind me to write.
Right.
And imagine how well you'd be writing doing it that way.
What I love about what you do actually though is you do help people, you utilize people's love of their brains and of their desire to overthink to like walk them into mental situations that all of a sudden they wind up dropping all the thought and seeing what's underneath it.
Yeah, I kind of like finding the acupressure points to like suddenly dissolve everyone's thinking or kick them into another reality.
Yes. Yeah, and you do that. You do it very well. I've always believed that perspective shift is the most valuable thing in the world, and it's also like the easiest and the hardest thing all at once.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, we're always just one thought away from a completely different reality.